Oh, good.
Take that from me. Okay. Hi, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. So happy to have you all here. Please just grab a seat. We're going to get started right away. Thank you so much for coming. Gosh, is this a gorgeous sight or what? Thanks so much to Stony Brook. We haven't used this venue before, and we have to come back. It's really great. So we're all here tonight because we want to hear from the Suffolk County executive candidates. We can't wait. They're here. They're ready to come on from the wings. So if you all could just take your seats, we're going to get started. So I really want to, first of all, I want to thank Shantae Lands. She's a local moderator here, newscaster with ABC. She might look very familiar to you. And what's great about Shantae is that because she's local and covers the news right here in Suffolk, she knows your county, she knows the issues. So really appreciative that she's out here tonight to do this moderation. And then I don't know where Bernard, is Bernard Macias in the room? Bernard, are you here? Okay, well, for those of you who don't know, Bernard Macias is Associate State Director for AARP New York. He's based right here on Long Island, and I'll get him to wave at you in a minute, because if you have any ideas for our work on Long Island or want to get more involved, Bernard is your man to see. So, shout out to the AARP staff and to our AARP Suffolk volunteers who are out there welcoming you. And I want to thank each and every one of you for coming out tonight, because voting is really a very sacred duty that we all perform. And clearly, you guys take that responsibility very, very seriously, because we know that you are here to listen. You're here to learn what they're going to say, and then you're going to take it back to the voting booth. So really, hats off to you all, because you are the most essential part of this whole evening. And here's the other thing. You all know what the issues are that are important to the 50-plus here on Long Island. And I think you know that the issues that are important to the 50-plus are important to everyone here in Suffolk County. And here's an interesting fact for you, because this is where Suffolk for sure wins the race. In the June 2022 primary, not that long ago, the percentage of 50-plus who voted, the percentage of all the people who voted in that election, you ready? Anybody want to guess? 90% of all the voters who showed up that day were 50-plus. That's right. That's exactly right. That was higher than everyone else except one other county in New York. So your voices have to be heard. That's why we're here tonight, because your issues have to be the issues of the candidates if they want to win the election. So we also did a report by the Center for Urban Future, and we found out that the 65 and over population in the last 10 years increased by 30%. That's when the under 65 population, by the way, went down. But here's the part that upset me a little bit, more than a little bit. The poverty rate of that 65 plus here in Suffolk County increased by 64%. That's pretty sobering, right? So we know, because we've surveyed what you think all the time, we know, AARP knows that 80% of Long Islanders are very concerned about remaining in their own homes as they age. You all built these communities, right? And if you want to stay here and be able to age in place, then we need to make sure that the policies are there to make sure that that can happen for you. And we also know that you're concerned about transportation, you're concerned about safety, you're concerned about being able to get places when you need to get there. So, AARP is nonpartisan. I think you all know that. What you also might not know is that we have 240,000 members just right here in Suffolk County. So for those of you who are members, thank you. I don't think I have to remind you about why you are members, but nobody fights for Social Security, Medicare, and so much more than we do, and we're also here at the local level all the time. So we've been working recently to make sure that Suffolk County is age-friendly in all the ways that matter: health care, communities, transportation, affordable housing. We are there all the time. And so we're going to continue that, and that's why we want to hear what these candidates are going to say tonight. So I thank you again for coming, and we'll see you after.
Welcome. Thank you all for being here. One more time, can you give a round of applause to yourselves for the impact that you have on these communities here in Suffolk County? And one more round of applause, if it's okay, for Beth Finkel. She's very modest, but she has 27 years with AARP for the entire state of New York, championing for you guys. So we're lucky to have her here tonight. Beth, thank you. So we're going to get started. We're going to start, as we always do, with ground rules. Just some housekeeping rules that you guys know, that the candidates know, and you know how this will flow. So each candidate will get 2 minutes to answer their question, and I'm obviously your moderator and your timekeeper. You can't see it right now, but in that back corner, way up on the wall, is a time. And it's a 2 already set up there, so I can see it, and when it gets close, I'll let the candidates know. The order of the candidates that you'll see, because one's Democrat, one's Republican, it was decided by a coin flip in advance. So that is why you'll see who you'll see first. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to do an introductory statement for all of you to learn more about them if you don't already know, and just to be caught up on their mission and their goals for you in this county. Once I question them, they have 2 minutes, as I mentioned, and I can also ask a follow-up question if the conversation's getting pretty good. After the last question, they give a closing statement. Now, as far as the questions, I'm going to ask about 6 to 8 questions. Each candidate will get the same amount. And the questions were decided by AARP New York, WABC, and Schneps Media. And I will choose the actual final 6 to 8 that they will hear. A lot of the questions were similar. They were all from issues that members of AARP care about, so we just condensed them to these 6 to 8, so hopefully it will hit home for many of you. So one more ground rule, no unauthorized recording. This is live streamed by the cameras, so people can see it online, but we ask that you do not record outside of that. And then also, pretty obvious, no distractions, no screaming from the audience. We just want to keep the ball rolling. So without further ado, let's get started. The first candidate that we are going to introduce is David Colon.
Hey, everyone. Good to see you all. Shante, nice to see you.
Hi, great to see you too.
Good to see you as well.
All right, so
Thanks.
just as I mentioned to the audience, we're going to give you 2 minutes for your introductory statement.
Gotcha. Well, first of all, thank you all for being here on this evening, and an exciting night ahead of you. I'm glad to be here with you. I also want to give a thanks to AARP and Schneps and ABC for hosting, along with Shante for moderating. My name is Dave Colon, and I'm running for Suffolk County Executive. I'm running for Suffolk County Executive because I love Suffolk County. And I believe that Suffolk County, while we have tremendous problems and issues we need to solve, has great opportunity ahead of us. I grew up here in Suffolk County, was born and raised. I've lived on the North Shore, I lived on the South Shore, lived in Western Suffolk, I lived in more Eastern Suffolk. And now my wife and I are raising our 3 kids here. And so the future of Suffolk County is personal for me. And I believe that we need new ideas, new vision, and new, quite frankly, leaders to bring us into the next decade as county executive. We haven't had a chance to elect a new county executive now in more than a decade, so this is a unique opportunity to set the course for our region for the next bunch of years. We've never had a county executive who was a prosecutor. We've never had a county executive who came from the business community, and I'm both of those things. So I'm well situated, have the experience to keep us safe, the experience to make sure that we have good paying jobs, and the experience to hold the line on taxes. I've also been deeply involved in Suffolk County. I chaired the Planning Commission for Suffolk County for 8 years, actually won a national award for cutting red tape here in Suffolk County, and I played other roles in Suffolk County. I headed up the county's Superstorm Sandy Review Task Force. I headed up.
Time, David.
What's that?
Gentle time. 20 seconds.
Oh yeah, okay, thanks. I headed up the county Suffolk Superstorm Sandy Review Task Force, headed up the COVID-19 recovery efforts for small businesses for the county. So I bring a bunch of experiences, and I think the difference between my opponent and I will be clear as we go through this. Someone who's from the outside versus someone who's been a career insider. And I'll look forward to your questions.
All right, let's get started. First one. The entire state of New York faces a housing crisis that has made finding affordable housing almost impossible. Every age group, from recently married couples to older adults, are feeling the squeeze. What will you do to spur housing growth in your county and make it more affordable?
Yeah. This is probably the number one issue I've heard about as I've gone across Suffolk County over the last year. It's families who feel like they're getting torn apart because people can't afford to live here, whether it's an older generation moving away, younger generation moving away. Our small businesses are feeling this also. Our small businesses are not able to have the workers they need because people aren't sticking around because they can't afford to live here. And of course, as I mentioned, I have 3 kids of school age who matters a lot to me, of course, that they're able to stay here when they come of age to get into the workforce. So this is a critically important issue for Suffolk County, as you say. Here, I think in this election, we have a clear choice. I've been involved in building housing developments, different kinds of projects, both in the private sector and the not-for-profit sector, both here on Long Island and elsewhere. By comparison, my opponent's been in office for 40 years, and this problem, as you said, is just getting worse and worse and worse. So I put out a plan, and you can find it at suffolkforward.com. You can find my full plan, but I'll just give you the highlights of it right now. So Governor Hochul proposed a plan which I opposed earlier this year. It was a very top-down, Albany-centric way of looking at it. I said, that's not the right way to do this. And I know this as chair of the Planning Commission, where I've been a leader in trying to move housing developments forward where it makes sense. We need to create, I would appoint, a county chief housing officer to work with our towns and villages to identify where we already have the infrastructure we need to be able to put housing immediately. So that means we already have the road systems sufficient, we already have the water system sufficient, the wastewater, et cetera. That could mean in downtowns, that can mean redeveloping strip malls, that could mean government property that could be repurposed. I've been involved in projects elsewhere, like redeveloping a mall outside San Diego, having the government helping to use land outside of community colleges in Florida. That's the kind of thing we need to do, bring that innovative leadership, work with the towns and villages to get it done, and make sure that we can put things to the top of the pile when it comes to our county approval processes, so that the projects we need to get done can get done faster.
All right. What plans do you have to protect vulnerable seniors from being scammed in the wake of cyber intrusion?
Yep. So this is obviously a timely question, not just for us as individuals, but also for us as the government. So Suffolk County government was hacked about a little more than a year ago. I would be the first person ever to be, as I said, coming as a prosecutor, to be county executive. I've actually been involved in Medicaid fraud investigations and prosecutions, so I know how seniors are targeted and preyed upon, at least in the healthcare setting. I also have a technology background. I'm a co-inventor on 19 patents related to internet technology, so I understand technology and have a background in protecting organizations from that. We need to make sure that from a county perspective, we have the right kind of cyber protection. So that means making sure the county puts their stuff up in the cloud for backups, making sure that we have cyber insurance, making sure that we have one cyber security officer for the entire county. Now, when it comes to individuals, we need to make sure that we take those learnings and use them to help individuals understand when they're at risk. So I would work with the police department, which would be under my authority, to work to create a senior cyber unit to make sure we're going after those who are targeting seniors and, quite frankly, anyone when it comes to cyber. There's basic things that we can teach people to do. For instance, there's these phishing emails that if you click on them, they launch Trojan horse viruses. And that can infect your whole computer and mess up your whole system, right? So we need to make sure that we're educating people about those things are out there. We need to have a dedicated section within the police. When I was in law enforcement, when I was in the Justice Department, we had a dedicated unit focusing on cybercrime. We need to have something similar here in Suffolk County. The other thing I would mention is that we need to make sure that we have the protection we need. My opponent has actually had the website of Brookhaven Town hacked by the terrorist group ISIS a few years ago. They took over the website. So we got to make sure that never doesn't happen. With my background as a technology person, I'm going to make sure that doesn't happen in Suffolk County, and I'm also going to make sure that our families here, and seniors in particular, are educated about the risks from cyber intrusion.
I have a follow-up question for you with that.
Sure.
You mentioned education a few times, and education might be key. How would you plan to educate the senior community on catching these scams?
So there's a few things we need to do. One, we need to work with the existing organizations like AARP to make sure we're having those guidance sessions, online symposiums. We've got to work with our library system. As you all know, we have a wonderful library system here in Suffolk County. Make sure we have our experts in the county, the police department, going and doing those seminars, doing those teaching activities. We also need to do it in our other settings, like sort of our senior care centers and more assisted living centers, right? Because everyone's on computers now. As you all know, this is something that affects everyone throughout their life, and we may particularly be vulnerable seniors may be particularly vulnerable, but we got to make sure that everyone has that kind of access to information. So using our libraries, using our online seminars, going directly to senior centers and assisted living facilities, et cetera. But I think the important thing also is that we start with having that dedicated unit within the police department who is expert in catching those who are doing this and are keeping up with the latest threats. One of the things I always say about cyber insurance, which organizations, I run a bunch of companies, we always have that. Why is cyber insurance important? Because it helps you pay for if there's problems. But perhaps most importantly, they help you defend against threats because they don't want to have you to get in trouble. We need to make sure that we have people like the police on the front lines keeping an eye on what the latest threat is, just like cyber insurance companies do. So this is important that we keep up because this stuff is changing every day. New threats, particularly artificial intelligence and new these kinds of technological developments. These things are changing. They're getting more sophisticated, and we need to be keeping up with those changing challenges. That means for the county having the cyber insurance, but it means for individuals making sure that our police department is keeping up with it and is able to educate you about the latest threats as they emerge and as they change.
All right. Well, as Beth Finkel noted in her opening, Suffolk County's older population and poverty among older residents are both skyrocketing, while Long Islanders are concerned about being able to remain in their own homes, getting around and having safe streets as they age. What will you do to address the demographic reality and these everyday concerns?
Yeah. So one thing I want to start with is talking about road safety. This is a problem where I think it's gotten out of control over the last bunch of years. We see more and more aggressive drivers. We need to have more police, quite frankly, on the streets and ticketing and cracking down on aggressive driving, right? Yeah. We're seeing it more and more. We also need to, I would want to see actually speed cameras out on our major highways because the number of times I've been passed by aggressive drivers, and I'm not talking to people going 10 miles over the speed limit. I'm talking to people going 30 miles over the speed limit, 40 miles over the speed limit. These people have a death wish, and they're putting all of us at risk, and it's not acceptable. We need to make sure that we're using for really aggressive driving, that we're cracking down on it using the new technologies that they have. Quite frankly, they do in other places. I do business around the country. There are speed cameras. Now, this is not a gotcha. We don't want to do gotchas. We want to let people know that it's coming. But if they're going to ignore the fact that they are recklessly risking lives of other people, then they need to be caught. And sometimes we don't have enough police to cover everywhere, but where there are really those kind of key areas, we should have those kind of speed cameras go after reckless drivers. We also then need to, like I said, have more police on the streets to do that, to keep an eye on, enforcing our laws, enforcing our traffic laws, and enforcing our speed laws, around our communities. When it comes to aging in place, I actually wrote, when I was chair of the Planning Commission, the aging in place guidance documents for our towns and villages. And one of the things we did, and one of the things I'd like to have our towns and villages do more of, is include in the code incentives for developers to include things like that allow aging in place to happen from the get-go. So what I mean by that is when houses are first built, put in that sort of like, if you put a 2x4 behind in the middle of the shower, where you could eventually put a handrail if you wanted to, it is so much cheaper. It costs about $1 to do it when a house or an apartment's being built. But if you then have to go retrofit your house, you got to rip the wall out, retile it, and put it in. It's like $1,000 expense. There are simple things we can do at the outset when things are being built to make sure that we have aging in place for when it's needed later. Sorry, I know I'm out of time.
That's all right. I have one follow-up question, because that question was kind of loaded, so it didn't give you enough time to address everything. Yeah. Poverty.
Yeah.
What would you do to combat poverty, specifically among the aging group?
Yeah, Suffolk County is the first line of defense when it comes to anti-poverty efforts. We run social services. We are the ones who need to make sure that we're keeping an eye on seniors, giving them support, working, of course, through existing organizations and community groups, churches, synagogues, et cetera, to work with, and also identify those who are really struggling, right? I think one of the things we've seen, and we saw this actually in the Child Protective Services situation as well, where the county plays a key role, where we don't have enough outreach into the community. We're not necessarily learning about those who are really vulnerable and helping them. So we need to make sure we're outreaching using through our existing networks and existing, like I said, faith-based organizations, et cetera. We also, in Suffolk County, has done a terrible job of paying the bills for our social service providers. So some of you may know this. Whether it's the food pantries or other places that get the county money, they are struggling because the county money is not coming on time. They're not paying fast enough, and that means is that the food pantries, the social service organizations, our not-for-profits, are struggling to pay their bills and to even keep their doors open. Suffolk County, there's no reason in an age of technology why we can't pay Suffolk County's bills on time to make sure that all our social service providers can keep their doors open all the time. And that is something that has been a real problem in the county over the last couple of years, and there's no reason for it. Suffolk County has its largest surplus it's ever had. It's not like we're trying to pinch pennies. In fact, I proposed that we actually return some of that money to taxpayers because we actually have, I think, too much of a surplus. I want to see us cut property taxes. And I think that's important, and I know I'm a little straying a little from your question here, but I think that's important because when we talk about affordability and being able to live here, property taxes is the one thing that doesn't change no matter what your income level is. So we got to bring I believe we need to return some of that surplus to taxpayers. And I will say that's a difference of opinion from my opponent and I. He's raised taxes 8 years in a row in the town of Brookhaven. And I don't think that's acceptable. I think we need to start with how are we going to hold the line on taxes, and when we can, we may not always be able to do it, when we can, bring that tax burden down, because this is an expensive place to live. We all know it. We're all struggling here, and it is. If we're going to, government has an important role to do, not just support people, but also bring expenses down on people when they can.
As residents age, there needs to be more access and events to cultural arts, entertainment institutions, and harness community engagement and cure the feeling of loneliness. If you were to become the next Suffolk County executive, what would you do to create more institutions and programs that will foster that engagement?
That's a great question. Look, we really are blessed to live in a place that has as many cultural sort of options as we have for not being in a big city. Now, of course, in Suffolk County, we're actually in the largest county, suburban county in the United States. And we have some wonderful facilities, like the facility we have here. If you ever go on the Wong Center website, wonderful programs. Of course, the Stoller Center right here as well. We have wonderful theater. We have wonderful arts in this nearby community here in the Stony Brook area, as well as throughout Suffolk County. Those institutions need our help and our support. One thing that I want to do in Suffolk County is create a grants office. So what we don't do now is we don't have an organized way of going after federal grants and state grants. The county just leaves that up to individual municipalities, or they'll do some one-offs here and there. My very first week in office, I want to create a grants office. That will be staffed with professionals who understand how to write grants and get that money and bring it back here to Suffolk County. That's federal money, that's state money. There are for all different kinds of monies that are available. There's law enforcement money. When I was at the Justice Department, there's an office called the Office of Justice Programs, OJP, and it has programs related to how do you bring to particular ways of fighting crime. We need to be going after that money for fighting crime. But to your question, we also need there's money related to going for the arts, to go to the arts, and that's mostly federal money. We need to be applying for that money. If we don't apply for that money, other places are applying for that money, and they're going to get it. We need to have an organized and sort of systematic and strategic way of going after that funding to bring it back to help support our local institutions. We have great institutions. We need to make sure that we're supporting them, and the way that government can really help do that is by bringing in funding from other places, from the federal government elsewhere, to support them. And that can manifest itself in a lot of different ways. It can manifest itself in special exhibits. It can manifest itself in lower ticket prices, and other things. But the bottom line is, unless we put that office together, we're not going to get that money. So let's put that office together, get cracking, and get the money that we can to support the arts. Thank you.
Nationally, family caregivers provide $600 billion in unpaid labor, saving taxpayers billions. Without them, America's health and long-term care systems would collapse. And in New York, about 2.2 million family caregivers provide about $39 billion annually in unpaid care to their loved ones. As county executive, what can or will you do to support family caregivers in this county?
So obviously, in my family and others, we've all had folks who are sick, and some who, and others who provide care for them. Look, we need to make sure that we're, supporting them in every way we can. The way I see doing that is by making sure we actually have caregiving options for people. And I say this from both a elder care perspective, but also honestly from a child care perspective, we don't have enough care workers here. One of the problems is, quite frankly, the pay is not good enough, and we live in such an expensive place. People can't afford to be care workers and also live here. So that actually creates this terrible cycle where we're pricing out, and that does put more of the burden on families. Look, families will always be the front line of defense when it comes to care. I've had serious health issues in my family where I was doing that as well over the years. But to have the option of having that helping hand is really important. So what we need to do is we need to work with our community colleges. There's some great programs actually in Nassau County and Malloy College and others to help get more caregivers trained. And we need to create incentives for them to actually be caregivers because the reimbursement rates for Medicare and Medicaid, et cetera, are not that high for that, and they don't get the pay. And that's true not just of elder care, that's true of child care. We have a real child care crisis in this county because people need to have two incomes to be able to afford to live here, but you have a kid, and I've had 3 of them, it really puts a huge strain on the family because then the child care, if there's no child care, there's no 2 workers. And there's no 2 workers, there's no being able to pay the bills. That's true also in elder care. If folks have to take time away from work, then they're not supporting the family in the way they may need to because of this cost of living. So I want to see us work on focusing on pathways to caregiving that starts with the county, working with our community college to create those kind of programs which don't exist right now to get people ready to be caregivers.
All right. Thanks. I forgot the gentle time, but you were right on time.
Oh, good. I can see it. Good.
Ageism permeates every aspect of our society, from employment to healthcare to pop culture. Can you give an example of ageism that you've witnessed and what you would do as county executive to combat ageism in county government and in this community?
Well, one of the things that so I'm coming from the private sector, so I'll share with you some thoughts on that to start with. But I started a program for veterans to help veterans start their own small businesses around the country, and that came about because when I've been involved in a number of small businesses, me and some of my friends were saying, "Gosh, our veteran workers are some of our hardest working, best skilled, technologically advanced. Some of these folks really should start their own business." And we sat and talked to them. We said, "Why haven't you started your own business?" And they said, "Well, when we leave the military, we're given a class on how to write a resume and maybe take it to a job fair, but we're never given the opportunity to kind of give training on how to start our own thing." So we created a national not-for-profit. It's called Patriot Boot Camp, and it trains active duty service members and military veterans on how to start their own small business. It's a 3-day program. You can look it up online. If you know people would be interested, please check it out. We're now part of DAV, Disabled American Veterans. For DAV, I chair their National Veterans Entrepreneurship Council. But the reason I tell you this is because as we had a lot of people go through the program who are older. People starting businesses tend to be kind of younger folks. And we've noticed that the older folks actually are great entrepreneurs. They're great small business people. You all know small business people in your own communities who are the heart and soul of the community. But often they're not given sort of the benefit of the doubt, particularly when it comes to helping them start something new. Because you're older. Why are you starting something new? Well, the bottom line is that older folks, as you all know, have the life experience to identify problems they've seen through life and be able to try to solve those problems. So what I want to do at the county is I want to create a small business success center. And so this is a slice of ageism, but I want to make sure that we're focusing on helping people start their own small businesses here in Suffolk County, no matter where they are in their age. They don't have to be a young whippersnapper doing coding. It could be, someone who wants to, start any business at any stage in life. A lot of people, quite frankly, when they retire, they're not ready to retire. Perhaps they want to keep going and they have ideas and things they've seen through life, and they want to start their own little small business or consulting. The problem now is that in Suffolk County, there's no one on your side if you want to do that. Big businesses have hired consultants and all those kind of lawyers and all those kinds of things. Small businesses don't have anywhere to go. So I want to create a small business success center in Suffolk County where everyone can go, whether they're a young whippersnapper or anyone later in life, to get the help they need to start their business.
That concluded our last question.
Oh, okay.
We are going to give you the opportunity to do your closing remarks.
Thanks, I appreciate that. So thank you all for being here. I appreciate the opportunity to share some of my thoughts with you. I am I'm going to say one thing because I think it's important, and I've seen these television ads, which makes me angry. So one thing I'm going to say to you, so I've learned in being running against a 40-year career politician that they'll say anything to stay in office. There's been ads put out about me saying that I welcome criminals and all this other stuff, which is ridiculous. It's offensive, quite frankly, because when I came out of school, I passed up a lot of high-paying jobs because I wanted to be a federal prosecutor. I wanted to be a federal prosecutor because I wanted to fight crime, and I did. I held criminals accountable across this country, including some here in Suffolk County. I was a guest lecturer at the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center, and I helped prosecute one of the al-Qaeda terrorists who was involved in the 9/11 planning. So I just want to make clear to everyone in this audience that what you're hearing on TV is a complete lie. There's nothing more important to me than the safety of your families and my family, and I want you to know that. My background as a prosecutor means that I am better placed than anyone ever to keep our community safe. But I also bring the skill set of having come from outside as well. And that means bringing different ideas, different experiences to help move Suffolk County forward and to tackle the challenges we have. And I've also been deeply involved in the county. I chaired the Planning Commission, which is probably the most significant non-elected position in the county, for 8 years. I worked on the water quality issues. I helped draft much of the water quality proposals that we didn't get to talk about, but are critically important, and that the Republican County Legislature shot down just a few weeks ago, and that I'm going to put back on the ballot in January when I get a new legislature. Yeah. Because there's nothing more important to the safety of our families, our health, the health of our region, the health of our economy, and our way of life than protecting the water that's underneath our feet that we drink and the water that surrounds us that makes this a special place. So thank you. I look forward to leading Suffolk County. I am a new voice, I am a new vision, and I think we need that kind of energy and experience to move Suffolk County forward, and I look forward to doing it with all of you. So thank you so much for your time.
Dave Vaughn, thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
And with that, we're going to take an intermission, and we will return with the second candidate. Thank you. Intermission lasts about 15 minutes, correct? 15 minutes. And then I'll see you guys right back here for the next candidate. Oh. We're going to get started again in about 2 minutes. We're going to get started again in about 2 minutes.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you could take your seats, we're ready to get started again. Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Sorry. Something.
Welcome back. Hope everyone's stretched and ready for round two. So I laid out the ground rules already. Just a reminder, each candidate, just as with Dave Colon, Ed Romaine will get 2 minutes to answer his questions, and I'll ask some follow-ups where I see it fits. We're going to ask the same exact 6 questions we were able to get in that we asked Dave Colon, that we're going to ask Ed Romaine. So without further ado, please welcome Ed Romaine.
How are we doing tonight?
So just like before, we're going to give you 2 minutes to give your introductory statement.
Okay, starting now.
That's starting right now.
My thanks to ABC Radio and Schneps Media, and most importantly, to AARP. I've been a longtime member, and I know there are people that would criticize people who have been longtime members, just like they've criticized people who have the experience in long time, who the voters have returned to office time after time again. But I'm here. Right now, I've served 11 years in the county legislature. I served 16 years as the county clerk, and the last 11 years I've served as the supervisor of the largest town in Suffolk County, Brookhaven town with 500,000 people. In that time, when I came to the town, it had some financial problems. Within 2 years, we had not only structurally balanced budgets, but we received a AAA bond rating from all the rating agencies in Wall Street, saving the taxpayers a ton of money. In addition to that, we just got a report. Every year we get a report from the state controller, every municipality, regarding fiscal stress and environmental stress. Brookhaven Town scored 0 fiscal stress, 0 environmental stress, which is probably the best grade of any town on Long Island. So you work on making sure that town government is responsive, that it's run right, and that it's controlled properly. That's what you do. What are some of the things that we address in town government? Suburban blight. When I came into the town, zombie houses were a problem. We've taken down 400 zombie houses in this town over the last 11 years. We've addressed suburban blight, which is a problem. If you live on a street and there's a burnout on your block, or a foreclosed house that just sat there for years, it has stole value from everyone on that block.
Gentle time.
So I'm finished?
Gentle time. You have a little bit of time.
Okay. So our goal is to address suburban blight. It's to make sure that the town is financially stable.
And I probably should have told you too, the clock is up there in the back, so
Oh, okay.
it
Oh,
starts
thank
at
you.
2 minutes, so you can see it for yourself, and then I say gentle time around 20 seconds.
Okay.
So let's get started. The entire state of New York faces a housing crisis that has made finding affordable homes nearly impossible. Every age group, from recently married couples to older adults, are feeling the squeeze. What will you do to spur the housing growth in your county and make it more affordable?
What I've done as supervisor, and I will continue to do if I'm fortunate enough to be elected county executive, which is build housing units. We have built in the last 11 years over 4,000 housing units in Brookhaven Town, Ronkonkoma Hub, and some of our downtown revitalization projects in Port Jeff Station, in East Patchogue, in North Bellport, in Mastic Beach represents that. That's important. But it's also important to address senior housing. There is a program that the federal government runs that I've worked on. It's called Section 8 202 housing, where people who are 62 and older can live there and pay 30% of whatever their income is, be it nothing, be it something, towards rent. And we have 7, 8 senior housing units like that. We haven't seen any federal money for senior housing over the years. Long Island has been shortchanged in so many ways. I intend to be a very strong voice to advocate for Section 8 202 housing so we can have senior housing for those who can least afford it. That's important. There's other things that you can do for housing. For example, the county takes property every year for back taxes and auctions it off. I would not auction any property in a low to moderate income area. Guess who buys those houses at auction? Think about that. What I would do is give those houses to groups like Habitat for Humanity, Long Island Housing Partnership, and other housing agencies to allow people to have actual home ownership and to rebuild these communities that absentee landlords have purchased these houses at these auctions. So there are things that we can do, and it's only the start. And I'm out of time.
What plans do you have to protect vulnerable seniors from being scammed in the wake of cyber intrusion?
I'm one of them. I'm one of them. I was a county employee, and the county was hacked. My Social Security number's out on the dark web. What do you think about that? I'm not too happy about that. I got to tell you, I'm not happy about that for the county employees or for anyone that did business with the county who got hacked. I run a very large town. We have cybersecurity insurance in Brookhaven. Suffolk County did not. We have our data center in the cloud. Suffolk County does not. We in Brookhaven do periodic penetration tests to discover our weaknesses and shut our back doors. That has never been done at the county. What would I do? I'd have a better system than we have in the county now, because this county, for the last 13 months, have been run on emergency orders by our county executive. Now, I know he's leaving. I wish him well. Good luck in the next life. But in the meantime, It's taken 13 months to resolve this problem. That's incredible. Because at risk is all of our Social Security numbers, all of our data. It's all out there. We need to address that in a meaningful way.
I have a follow-up question for that.
Sure.
So you listed the penetration tests, the data center in the cloud, and the cybersecurity insurance.
Yeah.
I'm assuming you're planning to bring all of that to Suffolk County?
Absolutely. I scratch my head why it wasn't there to begin with. You have to ask, you run a government. I run a very large government. That is just basic government. You have cybersecurity insurance just like you have homeowners insurance. You have a data center because you know most of the things you do on your phone will go in the cloud. Can't believe the county didn't have that. And you do periodic penetration tests to follow up to make sure that any weaknesses that are in there, you find and you close your back doors.
So with the current system you have now for the town you're in, how often is the data breached? How often are there cyber attacks with the current system that you have for your jurisdiction?
In the county?
No, for the program.
We have had no cyber attacks in Brookhaven Town. I know he mentioned something about ISIS posting something on our webpage. That was taken down in one day, but we have had no cyber attacks on our town.
All right. Next question. So Beth Finkel, who's in charge of AARP New York, mentioned in her opening statements before you came out that Suffolk County's older population and poverty among older residents are both skyrocketing, while Long Islanders are concerned about being able to remain in their own homes, getting around, and having safe streets as they age. What will you do to address this demographic reality and these everyday concerns?
The demographic reality is some people think that Suffolk County is a wealthy county, and by some standards it is. But there's a lot of people in this county, old, young, and in between, that are not wealthy, that are struggling every single day. We have to do more to help them. One of the first things that I would do, and he did not address, I'd talk about property taxes. Property taxes are such a small portion. County property taxes are less than $60 million, which is such a small portion of your tax bill. The bigger portion of your tax bill is when you get your LIPA bill. He forgot to tell you, he raised all your LIPA rates when he was on LIPA. He forgot to mention that accomplishment that he did when he was on the LIPA Board of Trustees. But we tax your LIPA bill. We tax your home heating fuel. We tax your natural gas. We tax your propane. That is one of the most regressive taxes that fall most heavily on those with limited income. We are one of the few counties in the state that does that. I am making a commitment to work to repeal those taxes. You should not be taxing energy. You should not be taxing home heating fuel. You should not be taxing propane or natural gas. They're ridiculous. Next time you get your LIPA bill, and understand my opponent served on the Board of Trustees. He was appointed by the former speaker who wound up in prison, but he was appointed by him to serve on the LIPA board. Next time you get your LIPA bill, take a look at the tax that they put on that and understand how that affects everyone. Because whether you rent or not, you still need to heat your home, you still need electric power, etc.
As residents age, there needs to be more access and events to cultural arts, the entertainment institutions, to harness community engagement and cure the feeling of loneliness. If you were to become the next Suffolk County executive, what would you do to create more institutions and programs that will foster this engagement?
Believe it or not, we have a lot of great cultural institutions out there. But you know what they're doing? They're all scratching for dollars. They're all scratching for dollars. As a county executive, I understand the value of cultural entertainment in our lives. You ask people who lived through the Depression in the 30s, what was the one thing that gave them joy? Going to the movies, seeing something that they could lift themselves out of their world. We need a whole range of cultural entertainment for all people, not only seniors, and we need to fund that. We have a great thing called Discover Long Island that promotes tourism. We need to fund that from the tourist tax by promoting cultural institutions such as this Staller Center. I happen to know Mr. Staller, great guy. He's actually building a redevelopment project in our town in Port Jefferson Station, one of the many redevelopment projects we have going on in the town of Brookhaven. You need things like that throughout the county that's accessible so people can congregate, so people can get together. We need senior centers like we have in our town where people can get together, have coffee, talk, play cards, meet people. Loneliness is probably one of the most devastating impacts of growing old. As you lose your spouse, your family members, your friends, you need to create better connections for seniors. Look, my mother-in-law lives with me. Before my parents died, they lived with me. I understand that. And I'm no spring chicken, as my opponent will tell you. I have a lot of experience. So what I want to see is a social engagement by all age groups, but particularly by seniors. I think that's very important in a healthy society.
So I have a follow-up question for you. With the, you mentioned the senior centers. I'm assuming you mean create more.
Well, we have several in the town of Brookhaven. We have 5 senior citizen centers, and we're building a 6th. So we do have senior citizens throughout. We run senior citizen clubs. We have, we at last count, we had over close to 50 clubs that we run for seniors for the simple thing that they get together for dances, they get together for lunches. During the pandemic, which was so devastating and needed leadership, not resumes, but leadership, we worried about people who were homebound. We were delivering in our town 550 hot meals a day, every single day during that pandemic. And we continue to do that today because delivering hot meals to people, believe it or not, is so important, particularly isolated seniors during the pandemic. Leadership during a pandemic was a difficult thing. I know Cuomo wrote a book about it. I think he's keeping the money too. But I don't get to keep the money. But what I do get to do is to run the town in such a way that it responds to emergencies like that. That pandemic was a once-in-a-lifetime thing.
Gentle time.
But we knew there were seniors that were isolated. We knew there were seniors that weren't getting out shopping. We knew there were seniors that would go hungry. That's why we were running 550 hot meals a day throughout the town. And anyone that called, we added them to the list. And we still do that to this day.
How do you plan to get the seniors to all these different locations if they may not have the means?
We have a transportation, a town bus system that drives seniors if they ask, that will take them. The county has a system also, particularly for handicap, that they will pick them up. But we need more. Our public transportation system in this county stinks. Our bus system does not address all of the needs of people who need transportation. And that's particularly for seniors because as they get older, they can't drive. But you know what I noticed? Our train system. I live in a town where no one's invested in our town. We have 3 train lines. All of them run on diesel. None of them run on electric. Where's the investment in MTA in Long Island? Why have we been shortchanged? And the other thing I noticed, our train system doesn't coordinate its schedule with our bus system. I never see buses meeting trains. We don't use what we have to the maximum of our benefit. If we connected our trains to our buses, we could do a lot better than we're doing now. But we need to build a better public transportation system because not everyone can drive. And a lot of people depend on public transportation.
Next question. Nationally, family caregivers provide $600 billion worth of unpaid labor, saving taxpayers billions. Without them, America's health and long-term care systems would collapse. Here in New York, about 2.2 million family caregivers provide about $39 billion annually in unpaid care to their loved ones. As county executive, what can and or will you do to support family caregivers in this county?
I definitely think that this is an issue that Medicare and Medicaid have not addressed. I cared for both my parents before they died. My mother-in-law lived with my sister-in-law. She died last year of brain cancer. At that point, we renovated our house and moved my mother-in-law with us. I know what that means. And she is a handicapped person. I know what that means. We don't do enough for caregivers. And that's on all levels. And you know, fortunately, none of them were long-term illnesses that lasted a long time. My heart goes out to people that have to care for people, their loved ones that are ill with no good prognosis in a long-term situation. Medicare, Medicaid have to step up in the federal government to provide caregivers with some relief, even if that is a tax deduction on their income tax. That is so important. I know my opponent works for tax shelters that shelters the income of millionaires and billionaires, such as the governor of Colorado, and we have to pay the difference. But I think if we taxed the very wealthy and we took some of that money and made that available for tax deductions for those who care for their family members,
Gentle time.
you would find a much better response. It's so difficult when our loved ones are ill and we have to care for them.
Just a follow-up question to that. So you mentioned cutting the taxes to the rich and Medicare and Medicaid addressing it. Locally, is there anything that you feel like you could do to help alleviate the problem with caregivers in Suffolk County?
We can provide hot meals for people at home. We can do things of that nature. Usually, these social programs are something that is run by social services. I would like to say our social service department is top-notch in the county of Suffolk. I don't believe it is. I believe it could do a much better job in caring for people who are indigent and poor and running through difficult times. Who of us here haven't run into a tough patch of life if you've lived long enough? We have to have the ability to have a helping hand, whether it be through social services, Medicare, Medicaid, or some federal program, or some tax relief for the caregivers. We just haven't concentrated on that. And so many people struggle every day just to make it through the day and to meet their needs and meet the requirements of their family.
All right. Ageism permeates every aspect of society, from employment to healthcare to pop culture. Can you give an example of ageism that you've witnessed and what you would do as county executive to combat ageism in county government and in this community?
Without being cute, my opponent is an example of aging because he criticizes my experience. I know, I may have to have my knee replaced sometime in the future, but if I do that, I'm going to get an experienced surgeon, not someone with new ideas. So, I know what that's about. I'm old by some standards, certainly by my opponent, who would like to dismiss me and all my experiences and all the elections that people have voted for me repeatedly by large numbers, and he casts that aside. But the one thing I've learned over a long life is as you grow older, as you grow more experienced, there's a certain wisdom that comes with that. And you ask people that are old, such as myself, and say, you know what? I know a lot more that I know now that I knew 20 or 30 years ago. I want to listen to it, wisdom. There isn't enough wisdom in my business, or in any business for that matter. I want to listen to experienced people. I've had people that I've known for a lifetime come up to me and give me advice that I thought was priceless, because they spoke not only from the heart, but from the experience of a long life. When you're 20, you think you know everything. When you're 60, you realize not only do you not know, but there's a few pearls of wisdom that you do know.
Gentle time.
So I'm going to listen to all people, young, old, and everyone in between. But most particularly, I'm going to listen to people that have experience. When I form a government, if I have that shot, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, I'm going to turn to people who know how to run something, how to make government work, and how to listen to people and the needs of people, particularly our senior citizens. I'm a 26-year member of AARP, so now you know how old I am. And I joined when I turned 50. But
Time.
I learned a lot by listening to people who had the insight and the wisdom and the life experience to guide me. So yes, while I will listen to all voices, I particularly want to listen to people that have the wisdom of age.
That concludes our question section. We're going to give you an opportunity to give your closing remarks now.
Well, first of all, thank you again. And thank you for being a great audience. I appreciate it very much. Every election asks voters to weigh the past against the future. And that's what this election is about. So as old as I may be, according to my opponent, my eyes and my gaze is fixed on the future of this county. I'm running because I'm not exactly pleased with the course and direction that the county is going. I don't know how many people have grandchildren in this audience. I have 3 of them. My oldest grandchild in 3rd grade, 4 years ago, because he's in 7th now, sat next to a boy by the name of Thomas Valver. I don't know if you know the Valver case. His father killed him. And we had to tell our grandson that. We need more caseworkers for Child Protective Services. I'm concerned about not only cybercrime, but crime itself. And the rise of crime, and the fact in this county, we have a dishonest budget. In my town, when I put a job in the budget, we fill it. That is not true for county government. Every department that we're being taxed for, positions are being left vacant. And I question why, since I'm paying taxes for it. Detectives alone, there's 51 detective positions that we're paying taxes for that are left vacant. That's nonsense. We need detectives to solve crimes, to create a deterrent.
Gentle time.
That is true in social services. I'm coming to change county government for the better. I'm coming to
No, hold on, we're gonna stop with the distraction. We're gonna not continue until you're removed.
You always find situations like that. But I'm coming to build a better county. I'm coming to build a budget that is honest and transparent, that deals with situations. It is why every law enforcement agency has endorsed my candidacy. I know my opponent is running on the Working Families line. And if you go on their website, you will see some of their key issues is defund the police,
Gentle time.
cashless bail, and clean slate for felons. I don't adhere to that, which is why I got the endorsement of every law enforcement agency.
Ed Romaine, thank you for sharing your story and for
Thanks
your
for
questions.
listening.
That wraps both sides of our community forum. Can we give a round of applause for both candidates tonight?
Thank you.
Is there anything to say? Or you're good? Beth, did you?